Welcome to Syndicated Nightmares, where each week we take a deep dive into an episode of Freddy's Nightmares based on the Nightmare on Elm Street film series. Hosts Dave and Michelle are joined by author Blake Best as they discuss episode 22 of Freddy's Nightmares, titled Safe Sex, which aired May 27th, 1989, written by David J. Show and directed by Jerry Olson. And this is the final episode of season 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, we made it.
Yeah. Yeah. Woo-hoo.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a very exciting milestone. I mean, this show, 22 episodes. This is actually, I believe, the last episode that Mick did for the show. I think if I remember correctly, he only did 22 episodes.
Yeah, he was just responsible for the first season.
It's old home week because David J. Shaw is a friend of mine, and he's the one that wrote this, and he's very well known for splatterpunk writing with Craig Spector and John Skipp, and all those guys were kind of the 80s rock and roll rebels, the punkers, the punk horror writers of the time. So it's nice. This is a great introduction to him for the series because David actually did some work for Nightmare 5, which came out in 1989 as well.
Oh, nice.
Well, I'll give the synopsis of the episode and then we'll get into it. So, a teenager is in love with a goth girl who is obsessed with Freddy Krueger, and soon enough, the teenager is plagued with dreams involving Freddy. In the second half, the goth girl is tormented by the man of her dreams. So, yeah, Dave and I earlier were talking about this poor goth girl's hair. We didn't know if it was a wig or if it was the real deal.
Yeah, I hope for her sake that it was a wig. So the main character at the beginning is a guy named Dana, and he's in the doctor's office. I'm not really. I mean, he ends up talking about this girl that he's into, but I'm not sure why he needed a shrink appointment in the first place. Like if he's there to deal with a specific problem.
Yeah, they never really got into it.
Yeah, but he's talking to the doctor, and he says he's not into the girl next door type. And then we're in the library at school, and he's checking out this goth girl with the bad wig, whose name is Caitlin, and he's with his friend Nicholas. And then they go over to her, and she's reading about Freddy Krueger, and apparently she's obsessed with Freddy. She says that he was a god, and I got confused about why they were continuing this conversation, because they basically just go over and start criticizing what she's reading, and they get in this whole argument about it. But
Nicholas doesn't help with his attacks either. He's like, Freddy, what are you reading about that info for? Freddy was this town's biggest closet skeleton. Look at what he did. It's charity for Freddy's kids. I thought that was great. This dichotomy, because it's awful. He is a terrible friend.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Blake, how many times have you watched this episode now?
Quite a few.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites. I think part of that is because before I was in the horror industry as a writer, I toured in a rock band and was very much into heavy metal and hardcore. So that was kind of my area. I felt Caitlin as far as voice is concerned, and reading about serial killers, studying criminal behavior, that all started really young with me. So I see a lot of parallels in myself, except I think I had better hair.
Hopefully.
But I just see a lot of parallels in myself, or interest in it. And I mean, the town having the secret. And you talk about it at the beginning, and I like how you made the point. We don't know why he's in therapy, Dana. But I would like to think that, like we talked about before with Do Dreams Bleed, that it's Freddy's influence has corrupted everything in this town. Everybody's got some kind of baggage, and it all goes back to Freddy. The parents visited upon the children. Children in therapy, we're having divorces, there's suicide, there's murder, there's people being committed, all this other kind of stuff. So I think the fact that they don't explicitly state that he's in therapy for whatever reason, I think that adds to it, because you're kind of thrown right into the middle of somebody's problem, like right from the get-go, without being fully informed, and that adds to the corruption of the town by Freddy, because this terror beyond the grave, he is still managing to wreak havoc even though he's dead. And
I agree with you. I think this is one of my favorite episodes as well, or at least from the first season, because I haven't watched all the second seasons yet.
Okay, so they are tormenting poor Caitlin in the library because she likes Freddy Krueger. And just how Blake said, he could relate to Caitlin, and so could I, because I was that weird girl in high school who wanted to talk about serial killers and Freddy Krueger, you know. So I could totally relate to what she was going through with, you know, like, you're just fascinated by certain things, and there's no shame in that.
Mm-hmm.
No, not at all. Not at all.
If people weren't fascinated by serial killers, we wouldn't have FBI agents, you know? So, like, don't knock someone's interest because you don't know where that's going to lead.
Right. By the same token, we're not glorifying murdering.
Oh, no.
Right. It's the interest of how does the human psychology form and mold itself around that idea as being a plausible way of living your life. You know, it's the psychology of this situation, nature versus nurture. And that's why when I decided to tackle something that already existed, you know, Freddy Krueger, I thought telling that story in that prequel, you know, that prequel novel that I wrote, the origin novel, Razor's Edge, was very important because it starts off very, very similar to other serial killers. You've got the abuse at home. You've got all this extenuating factors in their life. And that bleeds over to these characters, because each of these characters, I would love to write a paper on the flaws of Springwood and how Springwood has basically the only kind of people that can live there are people that are just miserable, outcasts from society.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Dana's talking to the therapist again, and he's saying that she's hard to get, and he thinks about her during the day, but now she's invading his dreams as well. And then his dream is basically like he finds her in this like music video dungeon, and she's like walking through looking for him, and they find each other, and then Freddy is chasing Caitlin and Dana, and Caitlin gets away, and Freddy jumps out and grabs Dana. And he wakes up and he ends up being fine, but when he wakes up, he's being strangled by his headphone cord. I mean, they use that much in the show, but like in the movie, somebody getting injured in the dream and then, you know, waking up with that injury. So I like that they took that into this episode.
The idea that now Caitlin is invading his dream, she has now gained Freddy's power. Which I think is funny because there's this connection between her and Freddy, and now she's exhibiting, you know, the powers that he has to invade the dreams. I just thought that was an interesting thing because they throw that into this again. You guys always like to mention how these episodes reference the film.
Oh yeah,
and that's something by this point, especially with the film that had just come out prior, The Dream Master, which, you know, the book is on. I mean, obviously you've got this power. You know, Alice Johnson has this power. So we've just come off of the fourth entry in the film where the dream power is basically, that's the whole thing in the movie. That's the whole point of the movie, is to show how powerful dreams can be.
Yeah.
So now I like that that's carried over into this episode with him. So like you said, he goes back to therapy and, you know, all that, and then finds himself. I love how you called it a music video dungeon, Dave. That was beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
It's very 80s. Very 80s. And something else I want to point out while we're on the, you know, him waking up being strangled by the cord, that house, that exterior house shot again, is the Blocker's house.
Yes, they have used that house at least like 4 times in season 1 for like somebody else's house. So I don't know if that's like the only house they were allowed to use, or they just got like 10 different exterior shots for the season. But yeah, everyone lives in that house.
Apparently. Not a lot of property up for sale in Springwood, no. I guess. So, you know.
No, not at all.
But they pick up, they're walking at school, you know, and Dana's talking to Nicholas. And again, we've got the exterior shot of the school, which was used in the film, you know, and that's another location that makes a reappearance here. So just talking, and he's really just trying to figure out what to do. He's just torn. I mean, he's exhibiting all the symptoms of, you know, somebody that's a teenager that's got a crush, this unrequited love thing, you know, which to him is completely pure and real. But to Nicholas, I think, just like to think he's trying to put a notch in his bedpost, I guess. You know, speaking of the episode title "Safe Sex," I really like that they're promoting safe sex. That was important. I like. Like this is the '80s. This is the end of the '80s, and you know, with AIDS and with all the other health scares, the the movement, all the movements about it, the anti-safe sex movements. You know, everybody's like, no, safe sex all the way.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I like how that's thrown in there because there is a correlation between, you know, sex and death apparently.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and with, you know, all this other stuff going on. So I just like that they're touching on all that, making the pop culture references as they were happening. This was actually happening. So he gives them this book, how boys pick up girls, like one of these manuals on how to, you know, it's like it's talking to a lady. It's not like trying to put together a record set. It's you shouldn't really need a manual. You just kind of, if you seem rigid, which he seems anyway.
Yeah.
You know, it seems like Nicholas has the best of intentions for him, but it's kind of fails in his execution, you know, to deliver that to him.
Mm-hmm.
That and the fact that the lead character looks a hell of a lot like Jeffrey Dahmer. You look at Dana with his glasses on, and then look at a picture of Jeffrey Dahmer. It is frightening. So he's giving him this book, and he's leafing through it. He's like, "You should read this," you know, trying to be a good friend, you know, in his own kind of screwed up little Springwood way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, he's like, you know, that's what it is. He just gives him the book. So that's where we're at now. He's going to read this book and try to, I guess, take Nicholas's advice as much as he can.
So they're talking about, like, you know, Dana's asking Nicholas if he's ever had sex. And then he's like, of course I've had sex. Well, mostly. And then he goes down to, I did a tactical R&R with Suki. So I was just wondering if either of you have any idea what that means.
No, I have no idea what R&R is.
I think I know what it entails. I don't know, obviously, what R&R means, but I think what he sees R&R, he's surveying the landscape.
Okay.
Is what,
okay.
Like not that. I'm trying to keep it as PG as possible here.
Right.
Not specifically that, but I'm just saying he's surveying the girl. Like they've had some on top, you know, like just heavy petting and making out. That kind of thing.
Okay.
Something else I want to note, I don't know if you guys noticed it, when he looks back down at the book, the front of the cover has changed, and they've used a scene from Nightmare on Elm Street 3 when Freddy killed in the dream sequence. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I almost clapped. I was so happy to see that. They have Freddy when he's in the tuxedo holding Kristen's mom's head. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was nice to see.
Absolutely. You know, I wish we all lived closer. You guys would make a great group to party with.
Oh yeah. Well, we go to conventions, so I'm sure we'll meet up sooner or later at a convention that you're at.
I'm looking forward to it. And I say when we do, let's all go out and you know, have dinner or do something fun, because this is the kind of, I love the way the show, how you feed off each other. Mm-hmm. It's a pleasure to be able to like really interact with two people that are friends, but also know how to joke, know how to take jokes, know how to you know, extend that invite to other people, and then you also have like a real legitimate love of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah,
you know, it's apparent.
Yeah,
time I talk with.
That's my favorite part about going to conventions, is just sitting down with friends and just talking about every minor detail about the film that you love the most, and having those people understand where your love is coming from and appreciating your love for it. And it's just, it's awesome to be around those people and just talk and have fun and not be judged, you know?
I think you guys should take this show on the road and do it at a convention every once in a while. Maybe I think that'd be a good idea. Like,
never even thought of that.
All right, yeah, we'll take it on the road. I have no idea how to do that, but we'll figure it out. I'm sure there's a YouTube video on how to do it.
You know, I'll talk to some people and see if we can't get it going, because I think it would make a good part of a convention, because they have all these panels, all these Q&As. How cool would it be to have a podcast on Nightmare on Elm Street at a convention with people from Nightmare on Elm Street?
Oh, yeah. I think there's going to be one at Flashback in August this year. There's going to be a Nightmare reunion at Flashback.
Yeah, there is. From what I hear, I've had people every day asking me if I'm going to be there. I've reached out to all these people.
Mm-hmm.
That's something else hard. No matter how established you are, depending on what the convention is, if you've never been, it's sometimes very hard to even get a call back. But yeah, I think it'll be fun.
Oh,
I think this will be
that would be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, he talks to the doctor, and there's this conversation about whether he's afraid of what will happen if he actually gets her, because he's all interested in this chase. And then he's reading the book. He's at home. He's reading the book. He falls asleep, and she comes into the room, and it becomes this seduction scene. He says, that he wishes he could change her wardrobe, and she's like, well, that's easy to change. And she just takes her dress off. And he wants to see her as a blonde, and she switches to a blonde wig, and then his clothes disappear. And then he's all, I guess it's all, this episode tackles like the anxiety over your first time, over losing your virginity. So like she's climbing on top of him, and he's very nervous and wants to wait, and has a vision of his mom showing up and trying to interrupt them.
Yeah. Which if he doesn't like that she's into Freddy Krueger, and he doesn't like the way that she dresses, and he doesn't like her hair, what does he like about her?
That exact thing, Michelle. It's that exact thing. It's the object of the idea of getting something that you know is taboo, that you shouldn't have. You should be focused on hanging out with your little friends, and with your sweaters, and you're going to the club after school. Going to having hot dogs and fries and shakes and whatever else.
Yeah.
She doesn't do that. She wants to smoke cigarettes. She wants to drive in a hot rod. She wants to read about Freddy Krueger. She wants to read about vampires and dress in black leather. I mean, it's the idea that he shouldn't have her that makes her more desirable.
Yeah.
Well, I think from experience, because my wife and I started out in college as friends. She friend zoned the hell out of me. Okay? And it's not for lack of trying. I didn't read a book on how to talk to girls.
Okay.
Obviously. But I mean, it was like, man, I can't have her. I want her, but I can't have her, and I had to settle for being in the friend zone. And I think this episode is a commentary on that not only the anxiety of losing your virginity, but the anxiety of being stuck with it, of not being able to find love, of not being able to find have the experience of your first time. It's a rite of passage for a lot of people. And just like having a beer, or going to vote, or smoking your first cigarette, or sneaking into a dirty movie, or skipping school, or whatever. It's like a rite of passage. I think this episode is a commentary on that nightmare, the nightmare of being stuck with nothing.
Yeah.
Plain Joe College, plain Jane College, being stuck like that. And Freddy exploits that, in his own really macabre, dirty, foul kind of way. But yeah, that's what I think. I mean, I think that it's a great commentary, like you guys said, on the fears of losing your virginity, but also the fear of being stuck with not being able to experience new things. Being asked.
Dave was saying in this scene, the mom comes in to like interrupt them, but possibly having sex, and Caitlin like smokes her, as Dana put it. She like has this cigar, and she's like blowing smoke in the mom's face, and then she inhales again and kind of absorbs the mom, and so the mom's out of the picture.
Yeah, that was like, it was a little bizarre. She inhaled her. Yeah.
Well, what's funny about that, and this just comes from the psychological study in criminal psychology and normal psychology. It's almost like Freddy's Nightmares commentates on a lot of that in a lot of different episodes. In this episode, it's the idea that, boys will like a woman that's somewhat like their mother. And I think in the way of the girl, Caitlin, inhaling the mother's essence, that's secretly part of what he wants. He wants that control. He wants somebody to have some control. He wants somebody to be able to assert themselves over him and to have somebody to answer to. And his mother is that person. Just like they say, girls often look for qualities in a man that their fathers had. It doesn't mean they want to sleep with their father or marry their father. It just means they look for those qualities. And I think that's what's going on here.
Yeah.
And of course the mother with the gun, that's just hilarious. This is really, really, really bizarre. dream sequence. But again, that's par for the course in Springwood, Ohio. That's what happened.
Yes.
That's very true. Yeah, so the mom is absorbed, and then I don't remember what happens after this.
Leave the room, doesn't he? He's wrapped in a towel.
Oh, that's
and
right.
He goes to leave the room. Yeah, and she's dressed in her, black leathery outfit thing, and he's just in a towel, looking more and more like Jeffrey Dahmer as the episode goes along, and he can't get out. She pulls him back. I'm actually watching the episode while I'm on the phone with you
Okay.
guys. Because, you can't, this is one of those that I just really like. So she throws him down on the bed, and then apparently it looks like this might actually take place. What he's wanting to happen might actually happen. The face that he makes when right before he wakes up with his eyes all wide, it's like terrifying.
Yeah, he wakes up. Caitlin comes in again. I have in my notes, Caitlin walks in again, about to have sex, then back in dungeon, and then she stabs him with a Freddy glove. And then his mom comes into the room, and he's dead.
He's dead on the bed, holding that How to Get a Girl book, or How to Talk to Girls, whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, so it very much looks like he died while pleasuring himself to this book. That's what I got from it. And so the mom is just like mortified.
Go there, Michelle, but I love the way you put it. You get so many extra points for putting it so eloquently.
Oh, thank you.
And then Freddy's reading the dating book, and he says, "The first time you never forget if you live." That's the lesson, I guess.
So does that mean that he actually did have sex with her in the dream, at least?
I guess, but it doesn't. In a dream, doesn't really count.
No,
right?
No, it doesn't. Because my numbers would be a lot higher.
In the other movie, how's this for a wet dream? So maybe that's what he does.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The expellation of bodily fluids, all of them. Blood, everything. Because he's dead. He's laying there on the bed, blank-eyed. I love that phrase. I saw that in something else I was reading about Nightmare on Elm Street years ago. Blank-eyed stare. I think that's very accurate description of what he looks like. But yeah, then you get Freddy with the little quip. He's one of my favorite parts. Not even the fact that he's not always in every episode, but he always shows up to give his 2 cents on something.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. And that's where it leaves for the first half, and it picks up almost immediately for the second half because we are at Dana's funeral.
And we've got Nicholas is there with this girl Suki, who was referenced in the first half.
Yeah, the one that he did a little R&R with.
Yes, exactly. The recipient of that. Yeah, and they're outside the church, and Caitlin walks by, and Nicholas confronts her, and I felt so bad for her in this scene, because she's like, "I'm sorry about your friend," and he's just being mean to her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's definitely upset that Dana died and is using Caitlin as an outlet, but earlier he was also upset that not many people attended Dana's funeral, and Suki was like, "Well, it is a school day, and there was a kid in my high school who passed away, and we got that day off school to be able to go to his funeral."
But in Springwood, if they did that, then there would
they would never have school.
Absolutely. Freddy's kids. It's a very, very, very thought-provoking charity. Something he really put a lot of time and effort into.
Yeah. Yeah.
That begs the question, Dave, Michelle. I just thought about it. There's not a lot of people at the funeral. We see these people coming out. That begs the question for me. What was it? A closed casket?
Oh yeah, because his face was all distorted.
Well, we don't know what was under the book on his chest either.
Yeah.
What the rest of the crime scene looks like. We don't know.
Yeah, very true. So Nicholas is very upset that Caitlin decided to show up, and he's taunting her about her obsession with Freddy Krueger and saying "Oh, I bet you're getting off on this. You and your main squeeze, Freddy Krueger, really, really enjoy seeing people in pain and in death." And she's just like, "I just like serial killers. I'm sorry about your friend. I don't know what you want from me."
Poor thing. And and now for some reason, Caitlin is seeing the therapist from the first half.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, saying how she he doesn't really understand why she's so into Freddy Krueger, and she's saying she doesn't want to be normal. She's attracted to danger.
And to go off on Blake bringing up psychology into this episode, that not only with there being a psychologist in this episode, but I think also for Caitlin's psyche, that she doesn't want to be like everyone else, and that's why she dresses the way that she does, so she can be different. I also got the impression that the reason why she is so adamant about everyone believing that she isn't afraid of anything is because she has some type of abuse going on in her own home, and so she's always in fear, like she's always afraid of something. So in order to protect that or to hide that secret of her family life, she is putting on this front that she isn't afraid of anything, when in reality she's probably afraid of a lot of things.
That's how I read it. That's how I read it. And you know, when I go do these seminars and when people ask me things about me, I always have to tell them, because they always ask the same question. When you guys meet me in person, you'll notice when you talk to me, I'll turn my head at an angle so that my right ear is facing you and I'm watching your lips. The reason for that is, when I was 14, my stepdad came home after a night of drinking. He was a cab driver, and he came home really late and dragged me up out of bed because I'd forgotten to do something. He hit me. He struck me on the side of the head with a fist, and when he did that, he ruptured my eardrum in my left ear. So I'm deaf in my left ear almost completely.
Wow.
So that's why when you said the abuse at home, because that's something else he told me years ago. He told me, he said, well, you'll never have any friends. You'll never make anything of yourself studying all this you know, foul serial killers, Freddy Krueger. That's not normal. And as I'm older now, I go back and think to that. I'm like, and beating the shit out of your kid in the middle of the night when you come home after drinking and drugging that's normal.
Yeah, exactly.
So I latched on to horror as an outlet for me, because I felt like I could live vicariously through somebody else's experiences, and I could somehow find the strength for myself that I didn't have. And I think that's why I relate more to Caitlin's character, because she puts on this front just like I used to try to put on, and go out in public and let people know that she's not afraid, and be something that people talk about and look at, because it's attention, and it's going to be kind of attention that she didn't get at home, because the only attention she got at home was extremely negative.
Yeah, exactly.
This time there might be a little bit of negative, but there's still, people know who she is and she's noticed. And I think that speaks to a person's ability to try to, for lack of a better word, therapize themselves. You know, to give themselves some sort of therapy. And I see that in parallels with her character, in the way that right now, the sequence where I'm looking at Nicholas and her in the library, she's very rarely making eye contact. She's looking down at the floor a lot. She's blinking. She's nervous. She's being confronted, and she doesn't like it. And it's reminding her of something all too familiar. You can just gauge her reaction. So it's a very reactionary experience between them, because Nicholas is now taking the part of whatever it is at home that's hurting her. He's now in that's the form he has. So he's almost Freddy Krueger to her as well. And I just see that, but sorry.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I think that's right about the part of the episode that we are talking about now, because after that, I think it goes to her in the library, and then Nicholas comes up to apologize for his behavior.
He asks her out, and she says no. And she talks about wanting Freddy's power to make people fear her. That Freddy had the power to make people fear him, and she wants that. And then he keeps asking her out. He offers to take her to this place called the Overlook. And then she eventually says maybe.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and he was being kind of like bribey with, not really bribey. He was like trying to make it seem like nothing, like he had no ill intentions at all. He was like, "Oh, there won't be any alcohol. There won't be any kissing or, touching. It'll just be us talking. And I wondered, like, has he just been making fun of this girl this whole time because he actually did like her? Or, like, why the sudden interest in her now?
That's a good point. I mean, I see that. I see that maybe she was forbidden fruit to him as well, because not only was she not somebody that he should have been with, but she was the object of his best friend's affection. So he felt like he'd be betraying his best friend by saying he liked her too. So he put on this front of wanting to be antagonistic and standoffish to keep that a secret so that he didn't hurt his friend. That's one of the ways that I see it. And I'd just like to mention, this therapist, he must be making the hell out of money, because he keeps seeing all these same kids, right? One to the other, Was he just wait outside the funerals? It's like, well, if you need to talk.
Well, he also mentions in the episode when he's talking to Caitlin that he was also the therapist for all of the parents of the kids that Freddy killed. So he also had them as patients. So yeah, I think everyone in Springwood goes to him.
Yeah, that's sort of how I see it. And I just like how they go back to, in this episode, they reference Freddy's backstory. I know you guys are aware my first novel was a Freddy origin novel, and that was where I explored the backstory. So I'm always really excited to see them go back and reference that. I kind of made my own reference, though. You're talking about patience, and we were talking about patience and people being seen, the kids, the children, and all that were connected to Freddy and the parents and all that. Well, in the book, there's two twins, Trina and Tracy Newton, and I referenced it in passing, but their brother, Kurt, is the one who split his eyelids off and got sent to Fairview. They referenced Kurt Newton in Nightmare on Elm Street 3 because Dr. Gordon says, we just lost a kid to Fairview. I don't know where he got the razors, but he cut off his own eyelids to stay awake. So I put those references together and bridged that. And that's sort of what I like doing when I was putting this origin novel together. I wanted to go through and focus on parts of the movie and parts of the series that I felt told in a specific way would give a complete, concise picture of the person that Freddy was when he was alive, because we all know what Freddy was when he died. He was a monster. So I just, that doctor seeing the patients and the reference to the original murders, and all that other stuff, I think that was really, really well done on the staff's part when they wrote this, because this is one of the more more grounded in the series of films reality than some of the other episodes.
So at this point, she gives him a maybe, and then we see Nicholas is making out with Suki in the library, and Suki, like, Nicholas wants to go further than just making out, and Suki's like, no, and walks away, and then he sees Caitlin walk by, and he's like, oh, are we still on for tonight? And she gives him that, like, maybe line again. And then I think the next scene is when we see Caitlin at home, because she's, like, drawing Freddy or doodling in her little sketchbook.
Or I think, isn't the next scene, like, the nightmare involving, or it's Caitlin's dream?
The wheel.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm looking at now. Yeah, she's in her leather and, spikes with her, again, dark colored wig here, and then he's on this wheel, and she's got a razor blade up to him, and he's shirtless, of course. So yeah, that's the next sequence. So we're about to have an unexpected guest show up here in a little bit.
Yeah.
Freddy, of course, got to put his claws where they do and don't belong all at the same time. So I love this sequence. It's very nightmarish because I kind of have a fear of being trapped someplace I can't get out of, and being strapped to a wheel with a burnt to a crisp, very dead serial killer on the floor watching me, and with no way for me to get out is very unnerving.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Effective in this episode because you see it spinning. Earlier, my son, because my son is 5, he's aware of Freddy. He likes him. He's seen bits and pieces of like the show, because the show is a lot more laid back than some of the films.
Oh yeah.
As far violence and gore. But he said, "Daddy, why is the Freddy upside down?" I said, "Freddy's not upside down. The boy's upside down." And it was like him realizing that as it turned around, him noticing things like that. I just did. It was neat to see that from a child's perspective. Hey, he's upside down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. In the dream, Caitlin realizes that Nicholas is going to be in big trouble if she goes out with him.
And they never do actually go out. She brushes him off the rest of this episode.
Well, yeah, it seemed like he was already at Overlook, and she was like a no-show or something, so he calls her on a payphone, and is like, "Hey, so you still want to meet up?" And that's when she gives him the cold shoulder and says, "Oh, I can't. I have other obligations. I'm like washing my hair or something, like that."
Right. I need to wash this awful wig.
Yes, I'm washing my fabulous 80s wig right now. It'll take a few days to dry. She gets a phone call from Freddy, I think. Or is that on the radio?
Yeah, at some point there's like a radio dedication from Freddy.
Uh-huh.
And I think this is where she has like a realization that her attraction to Freddy has taken a dark turn, that, she had this dream where she saw Freddy kill Nicholas, and that's not what she wants. She doesn't want to be part of killing people. Mm-hmm. So now she's like, how do I get Freddy out of my life?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And that's when the psychiatrist tells her to embrace her nightmares and to keep going, because obviously her psyche wants to finish something, so she needs to let it, and then Freddy will be out of her system. So she decides to basically dream about Freddy so to get him out of her system, and that doesn't turn out too well for her.
No, it does. And I love how he gives advice. They say, "Oh, I'm not dealing with it. Until you deal with Freddy, don't give any advice on how to battle the nightmares, on how to take care of the all the problems that he has, because you're talking about something that's abstract. He should know better than most, because he treated the kids, and he has connection to the original murders. He should know, but he's just giving that kind of makeshift sort of advice. I'll just see him through, just conquer your nightmares. Just go through with it. It'll be okay.
Yeah. Well, then her nightmare, she's like, I think she's at Overlook in her own car, and I don't know if she's waiting for Freddy or waiting for Nicholas. She's waiting for somebody, and this like creepy guy who's supposed to be a cop approaches her because her car won't start, and like Freddy kind of takes over her car a bit.
Yeah, actually I really liked this sequence, because she's sitting in the car and everything she touches cuts her. So like she gets cut on the seatbelt, cut on the wheel, cut on the radio. It was kind of, and she can't get out, she can't start the car. I thought that was a cool, just very simple but effective nightmare thing.
And that's when the cop approaches her, right?
Yeah, and then I think he asks for the registration. I know he's like this really creepy cop. And then they're having this back and forth, and then suddenly Freddy shows up and jumps in the car and grabs her.
Yeah, kind of like Nightmare 4 when he kisses Sheila and he's like, "Want to suck face?" But in this one, he gets real close to her, like they're on a date on Overlook Drive, and he gets real close to her and he's like, "Want to make mouth music?" And
Is that what he said?
Yeah. Want to make mouth music, and then they start like kissing, or he kisses her, and then it flashes to her house, and she's like ambulance and cops and everything are at her house, and Nicholas runs into her bedroom and finds out that she's like dead on her sofa, and there's a carving on her chest. And the paramedic is like, "Oh yeah, it's self-mutilation," but we know like it was really Freddy who did it. And Freddy carved Freddy, or Caitlin plus Freddy forever, or something like that, on her chest.
Mm-hmm. She apparently OD'd.
Oh, on barbiturates.
Yes.
Yeah, but we never saw her take any pills, so I don't know how they got to that conclusion.
Well, she did take sleeping pills
did she? Oh,
to
okay.
get into the nightmare.
Okay.
But would those be...
I don't think sleeping pills are barbiturates.
Okay.
No, I
No,
don't.
they're not. They're just sleeping pills. I mean, sometimes they call. They should have said maybe death by misadventure or accidental overdose.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they just thought barbiturates in keeping with. The reason I think they said that is because they saw her and what she looked like. They made a preconceived notion because that's what this episode's all about.
Yeah.
Let's look at somebody, judge the hell out of. We'll judge him because he looks like a nerd in Jeffrey Dahmer. And then judge her because she looks like, she's promiscuous and sacrifices animals, and people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that might have just been sort of a way for them to kind of throw that back and turn it on its ear. Oh, she died by barbiturates because they just looked at the crime scene and just made an assumption. And that never, ever, ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
Ever.
Yeah.
In real life.
Yeah, no, not at all. So at the end of the episode, did we get any Freddy send-off for this one?
He says, remember, if love is the drug, just say no.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Freddy's Just Say No commercial.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I might want to, I want to add that I like another reason I like the car situation is because here Freddy is, attacking someone in an old car. Before he was attacking them in a red Cadillac in first Nightmare on Elm Street. Here we have another old car.
Yeah.
And Freddy's in that, except he's actually physically in it. Before it was just the roof came down and it was red and green stripes. So it was just an essence. Now he's actually in the car.
Right.
So I like that. It references that situation.
Yeah. So Blake, overall, how did you like this episode?
I liked it a lot more, especially now that I've got someone to talk about it.
Yeah.
a couple of really awesome people to talk about it with. It's a lot more fun to get to talk about the tropes and things that we see and the references to the films and references to pop culture, things that were going on in society. And that's something else about the show. I think if it would have been able to, run a little bit longer, we could have, with a bigger budget, we could have really seen what it had to offer, because this show was broadcast originally late night. We're talking 9, 10, 10:30, because the themes and the violence and just the overall feel of the show was too dark for primetime network TV. And they pushed the envelope. And that's one reason why the show was a success, and also a reason why the show was ended prematurely. Because I don't think they knew how to handle it. And Robert himself said he couldn't really see Freddy on TV.
Oh, no.
And that's why when they told him it was going to be broadcast late at night, they were going to be able to kind of push the envelope with effects and with themes and violence and gore, that he jumped on board because he didn't want Freddy to be watered down. Which is funny, because if you talk to some Nightmare fans, they think Freddy got watered down right about Nightmare 3 and 4. He became more of a stand-up comedian and more of a funny guy than an actual killer. I think that makes him scarier because, look at your serial killers. The ones that have humor are usually the most vile and the most repulsive. And you've always remembered them, like Albert Fish, like Andre Chikatilo, and H.H. Holmes, and all these others.
Yeah.
That's why you remember them. And I think that's something that Robert, to his credit, saw, and he knew that it could be exploited in a good way by making the transition to TV and later at night and keeping with those themes, because I think the show was great.
Oh, yeah.
For its time, especially. And then now when you see stuff like Dexter and, stuff like that, CSI, Criminal Minds, and all that on primetime TV, you would not have seen that on TV then. So I think that shows like Freddy's Nightmares kind of paved the way for the envelope to be pushed in such a way that it could be pushed onto a mainstream audience. Because people love Dexter. I am a huge fan of the show.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I like Dexter except for the last season.
Yeah, that's hit or miss on the last season, but yeah, I think a lot of people would agree. Season 4 with John Lithgow as the Trinity Killer was one of the best seasons.
Oh, heck yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely see that Freddy's Nightmares and shows like that, like shows like Friday the 13th, the series, Freddy's Nightmares, Forever Night, Beyond Reality, The X-Files, they all kind of push that envelope as what we could see on TV as far as violence and themes. And it made for more mature television.
Yeah.
And made for more riveting TV because, people need to realize it's not all roses and lollipops.
Oh, no, it's not a 1950s sitcom. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's no Leave It to Beaver and Beaver Cleaver. There's cleavers here. Yeah, they're just going into face and throat and back. Yeah, there's plenty of those. But it's just that's one thing I like about Freddy in Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy's Nightmares is because it's something that will stand the test of time. It played in 109 markets across the world and was broadcast on TV. Late at night, so people could still get their fix of Freddy every week because they were so popular. You can't just turn out a movie like every 5 seconds. I mean, New Line pushed the envelope by churning out as many as they could. But no, that's funny. I just saw production designer Mick Strong on the credits here. I was like, yeah.
Oh, nice.
My buddy. Oh, what a send off! What a great episode to see your last episode. And it was great. It was great stuff. I'm sure you guys you've had him on before, but it was so funny because people that were involved with this episode also worked on the other Nightmares. Like I said, David J. Shaw worked on Nightmare 5, and then Jerry Olson is a good friend of Mick's, and he's in the book. He's got an interview in Behind the Screen.
Oh, cool.
Nice. So you get those references and get to hear their connections to Freddy prior to him becoming this TV sensation, because Freddy's Nightmares came out in 1988, and Robert actually, if you read his book, Hollywood Monster, he actually helped convince some of the people that worked on Nightmare 4 to move on to the show.
Oh,
because that's why you see the makeup is pretty much like it was before. And the next year, you get David Miller back, so then things start going towards the way it looked in Nightmare on Elm Street 5 and Freddy's Dead. You also have a production designer on that stuff, I believe. So,
yeah.
But yeah, you definitely see this is a great episode to end the first season on. First season pushed a lot of envelopes. I mean, 22 episodes, and it just you get the order. You get the pilot, which was great. Sister's Keeper, Into the World, Judy Miller, Come On Down. Those are the those are just some of my favorites.
Dave, how did you like this episode?
I thought it was great. I think, I honestly think it was one of the best, if not the best, from the first season. I liked that. I think I liked the second half more than the first. I liked story-wise, it was something that you could see being in the universe of the movies, and I really liked her character as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this second half could definitely been a part of the film series. So, yeah, I liked it a lot. But yeah, so Blake, we will have you on again, I'm sure, when we cover season 2 in the following months. So we'll get together and plan that.
Oh, that sounds like great fun.
But yeah, so is there anything that you would like to promote aside from your book, or also with your book?
Sure. Well, I've got that show coming up on March 9th. I've also got another one that's going to be at one of the premier tattoo parlors. They're having some event. I don't have a specific date on that one, but that's also going to be in Bowling Green. But as far as other shows, I'm kind of reaching out to the other conventions. I've already talked to Monster Mania. I've reached out to Lexington Comic Toy Con. They're trying to get me on. Fans are trying to get me on the Texas Frightmare weekend.
Oh, that'll be nice.
I don't know, because it's so hard to get in touch with people. Doing this thing by email, I'm kind of old school. I like to actually talk to somebody and set up and make plans and stuff. But I do have another exciting little endorsement. I'm endorsing a glove maker who actually is the first glove maker that I've ever seen that builds a glove from the Freddy's Nightmares television show.
Oh, cool.
So nice. His name is Josh Clark. The website is on Facebook. His site is Flaming Creations, and he does gloves from every single movie, and except for New Nightmare. He hasn't done one of those yet, but he's done all the others, and he just had a great sale. I'm actually going to start endorsing him and taking the glove from Nightmare 4 on the road. He just had a sale on the 14th where it was buy one glove and get one glove free.
Okay, that's not bad.
Not at all. I bought a Part 4 Hero glove, and then I also bought a Part 5. So I've just got to have them both. I've got 1 through 3. I might as well complete the collection and just keep getting as many as I can. But yeah, he's doing great work, so I'm endorsing him on on the website as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be adding all that information soon. And then I promoted this show today on Facebook. I did a live video where I talked about you guys.
Oh, thank you.
I said only great things, I swear.
Thank you so much.
But I was just so excited to be able to be a part of this. And thank you guys so much for having me and for promoting the book and for having Mick on and really taking interest in what we do and being a part. It's a pleasure to be a part of the Nightmare on Elm Street community and a part of the mythology. He and I being inducted together was probably one of the most memorable events of my life, and to be forever associated with Nightmare.
Yeah.
There's a lot. You could do a lot worse.
That's true. That's true. Okay. Well, thank you so much again, and we will.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please join us next week for a very special bonus episode where we get to talk to production designer Mick Strawn.